Every creature that I know of on this planet goes through multiple developmental phases. Generally speaking, the animal will evolve from one stage of life to the next and moves through this process smoothly and coherently if it's in its natural environment and if it has everything that it requires at its disposal to feed into this developmental process. And human beings are no different. We go through multiple phases of life. And that generally moves from infant to child to adult and then to elder. Most of us, however, in the modern world are stuck in the child part of the developmental phase and are not moving into true adulthood. And that's because there's currently a mind war as well as very carefully crafted systems in place to keep you a juvenile of the human species. Because adults are harder to control and harder to manage. And the way that this world is moving currently, the dominant powers want you easy to control and easy to manage. And to the degree that you are still stuck as a child, which actually can be staggered, where some parts of you are adult and some parts of you are still child, is to the degree that you are going to be controlled by others and to the degree that your life is going to feel stuck and unfulfilled. Becoming an adult human being requires taking ownership and responsibility for every layer of our life, regardless of how it's showing up. And this can move across different domains, and that's the important part to remember, is that even though you might be responsible in one part, there are often aspects of your totality in which you are not being responsible and you are not taking ownership, and those are showing you a stifling, arrested development, as it were, that you have not been able to allow to fully develop. And this is not necessarily your fault because there is just so much pressure and so much investment in keeping you that way. And in this mind war that we are discussing, we either allow ourselves to be taken over or we learn to resist and step outside of this influence to go in our own direction. This idea initially of human adulthood came to me through two different vehicles. One was my mentor, Mushtaq Ali Al-Ansari of the Nine-Sided Circle, whom I worked with for many years, and the other was living and working at a wolf sanctuary. And as timing would have it, he also worked with wolves when he was younger, and it gave me the perfect opportunity to see this developmental phase process of moving from child to adult in action with wolves, where we see a literal adulthood shift with wolves. See, the really cool thing about wolves is that they actually have multiple, very clear, very definable phases of life. When a wolf is a puppy, in some ways it is similar to a dog. Not exactly, because wolves are very, very intelligent and in some ways way more energetic than dogs when they are puppies. But nonetheless, they are more playful, more agreeable, easier to manage, easier to control. You can actually wrestle with a baby wolf. You can pick it up. You can manhandle them. They're more willing to trust you with less evidence that you are trustworthy. And at some point between the ages of 2 and 4, and it is a big spectrum that way, it's not at a specific time frame, they shift. And one day, the wolf is just different. They are no longer the same animal. In some ways, relating to the baby wolf is not going to tell you who they are going to be when they become adults. And once they go through that shift, they become more of who they are going to be for the rest of their lives. And their personalities could be radically different from when they were children. And with that said, they are less agreeable. They are definitely not going to let you manhandle them. They are not necessarily as trustworthy. They need more evidence and more time before they are willing to trust. They generally will not hand over their sovereignty to you and allow you to guide them and control them. They become more whole, more sovereign, more individual creatures capable of self-governing, and with that comes certain responsibilities. Now they are a part of a pack. Now they are responsible for aiding and assisting with hunting, and they are required to help raise puppies, along with just being responsible for themselves and survival. But now you have this animal which becomes a capable, sovereign individual that is also a part of a group and has to contribute to that group. Suddenly it goes from being taken care of, being managed, being led by its parents to having more self-ownership. And so the language that we use in these fields in order to discuss this is the adulthood shift. And we know about it and we can expect it. And we often even talk about it as their babies, knowing it's going to come. Now, what's even more interesting is that this degree of drastic shift is not one that you encounter with dogs. In general, dogs may go through that shift of moving from puppy to adult, but the shift is a little bit more bland. It's a little bit more beige and homogenized. It's not as stark. And that's because dogs are domesticated wolves. And so a lot of people think that taming and domesticating are equivalent. They are not. You can actually tame a wild animal in one lifetime. You cannot domesticate in one lifetime because domestication is a biological process through which you put an animal through an actual shift in its physiology and often in its anatomy in order to be a different creature altogether. And right now, a part of this mind war that we are dealing with is using the powers of domestication. The domesticating current, the domesticating technology is being applied to human beings. And why don't dogs go through this shift quite as drastically? Well, because there is an interesting thing in biology that is referred to as neoteny. And neoteny is the retainment of juvenile features into adulthood. And so a part of the domesticative process is to neotenize, to have an animal retain its juvenile features throughout its whole life. Why? Because the juvenile of a species are easier to control, they are easier to manage, and they are less dangerous. For example, if you were to play with a baby bear may not present the same level of threat to you as, let's say, an adult bear, which is going to be a whole different ball game. So the same is true with human beings. Human beings are easier to manage in juvenile states and harder to control when they're actually adults. And so this domesticative technology is still alive and well and is continuously moving deeper and deeper into the human being, into the psyche and into the soma. So why is this important? Well, to the degree that you are domesticated and or neotenized and or still a child, and all of that wraps up together into one general sphere of behavior, is to the degree that your life is governed by other people. Any part of your life that you do not bring into self-governance, into adulthood, is a part of your life in which you have handed your power over to something else. And the less powerful you are, the less capable you are, and the less able you are to create the shifts you want in your world and in the world as a whole. And not only that, but there is an inherent degree of restlessness and unfulfillment and frustration, a type of stifled potential, because you are meant to become an adult human being. That is a part of your developmental process. And you're not being allowed to do that, because there are chains and there are constrictions around you to prevent that from occurring. And part of what I often talk about is wildness and learning to reclaim a wild state of being, as well as domestication and learning to spot domestication and cast it off of us. And a big part of how that happens is to simply focus on becoming an adult human being, because that is one of the major ways that they win the mind war and they keep you stuck and stifled. So the first layer of this is to learn how to become more self-governed. And self-governance is a skill. It's something that in today's world requires constant checking on and to have practices that help you become a more sovereign creature. Something that you can come back to every single day in order to create a deeper sense of individuality and capacity as an individual. So self-governance is when we take back the power of being led from other forces or institutions. Because right now there are aspects of your life that are being led by other people. And there are aspects of this world which are inherently built to facilitate that being led. To the degree that you have to relinquish control of your choices and actions to other forces is to the degree that you are currently being led. And there is a way of doing that which is covert, in that we can actually allow ourselves to pretend that we are being led in order to play the game of society. And in order to do that, we may have to follow certain laws, for example, or we may have to go to jobs that we don't necessarily love. The real question here is whether or not internally you feel self-governed or if you are being controlled. And a big part of how this is going to present for you is going to be in your value structure. It's what you actually value as an individual, what is important to you, and to the degree that your natural organic energy wants to move spontaneously. So there are things in your life right now that you do which no one has to remind you to do, no one has to force you to do. You love to do them. You love to learn about them. You love to practice them. You love to engage with them. And you spontaneously show up. You spend money on those things and you spend time and energy on those things. You learn about those things. Those are showing you at some level your values, your value structure and your value hierarchy. And your values, in many ways, determine how you show up in the world and what allows you to be self-governed and self-led. So the degree that you have adopted someone else's values, whether those values come from a religion, from politics, from family, from society, from friends and family, is to the degree that you are being controlled. So a big part of this is learning to actually identify your values, what's actually really important to you, and not what you think is important to you, but what you authentically are demonstrating. And or being able to link the things in your life that you feel are being governed by other people to your values. So for example, if your biggest value in life is, let's say, health, which it is for me, for example, then you might want to look at how following laws and how going to a job that you don't like is actually helping you stay healthier. Possibly because you're not in prison, and also possibly because you make the money that you need and you have the stability that you desire to take care of your health. Because if you wouldn't have that money, then maybe you couldn't do that. Another element of this is to look for where you have been told what to think. And this again ties into values, because your ability to think for yourself is going to be controlled by what you think in some senses is important, because what you think is important is what you will act on. And a lot of ways, mental mapping and the thought processes that you are given by all these external institutions, they are trying to tell you what to think is important, where to focus your life energy. And so when we adopt those values from other people, we become stifled and stuck, and we have to carve and butcher ourselves to fit into a mold and to redirect the flow of life moving through us in a way that feels coerced and stifled. And I'm not saying that this is easy work. This is something that's going to require some deep authenticity from you, and it's going to ask you to show up and really look at your life and yourself, and not just what you think on an internal level, but what your life is actually displaying to you. And having a map of perspective for analyzing your life across these domains is exceedingly helpful. And there are many different maps, and we can create different divisions of how your life divides. But just to give you a basic one, you could look at your health, your relationships, your relationship to money, your financial situations, or business even, and soul and or spirit, how you relate to the deeper dimensions of reality. So, for example, if your health is being co-opted and controlled by corporations and pharmaceutical industries, if your relationships are unexamined and are about you being traumatized and stuck around certain things, or you have unrealistic expectations handed to you by society, If your relationship to money is completely also unexamined, then you don't have a way to take ownership of your monetary situation. And if your soul has been guerrilla warfared by religion and politics to tell you how to feel about the world, then those are domains that you might actually want to explore and see where you can take back control and self-ownership and responsibility for what's going on in those arenas. And so the next aspect of this is to actually learn to become more broadly capable. And in order to become more broadly capable, we have to step outside of the boxes that people often try to put us in. Right now, we are in a state of capacity as individuals that is probably a lot lower than it has been for most of human history. And we would think, oh, actually, I'm more capable because I have technology and cars and all of this stuff. And that's absolutely not the case. Most of us know how to deal with repetitive behaviors that we are taught by civilization that we are required to have, such as how to drive a car, how to work the basics of technology, how to go to the grocery store, how to show up for our jobs. It's very actually limited. When we look back at what humans had to do back in the day, think about having to navigate across an ocean with nothing but the stars to look at, and the only thing that you could have to eat and drink is what you could acquire yourself. Think about what humans would have had to have known and been capable of doing to traverse an ice bridge and move from continents on nothing but their feet. Think about generations upon generations of survival, of knowing how to hunt, of knowing how to identify hundreds and hundreds of plants, of knowing how to actually create crafts, how to make rope, how to sing and how to dance and how to pray and how to commune with spirits, and all of these different skills that once we had to do. Most people these days are given entertainment that they could just turn on TV. Before, we had to know a bunch of different songs, and we had to know how to actually sing and dance, and how to tell stories, and how to do all of that. And we had to collect all of this and keep them as containers. In short, we had to be skilled people. And more these days, skills are becoming narrower and narrower. So one of the ways in which to actually take back control is to become more broadly capable, to learn how to be more useful in a wide variety of ways. And what this is going to do is not just give you a set of practical skills, it's also going to give you a deeper sense of self-esteem. Because the deeper self-esteem that you can have, the more you will know that you are worthy of self-governance. And so what does this look like? Well, this can look like a lot of different things. It could be becoming really skilled in a variety of different arenas, such as movement or practical magic, or learning craftsmanship, or learning how to weld, learning how to make bows, learning how to grow food, learning how to trade, learning even skills in the world of the 21st century of knowing different ways of using technology, because whether we like it or not, technology is a part of our lives. Learning how to speak to people and how to show up, and learning how to actually be a cooperative individual in society, and more. It actually doesn't really matter. And the point is not to give you a prescribed set of skills that you have to learn how to do so that what I tell you in this video becomes another authority. No. It's just about knowing that you have the potential to be very broadly capable, and that for a large part of human history, humans, especially human adults, were broadly capable. And so you are an inheritor of the human lineage. How can you show up today in a way that feels authentic and is a way that it's aligned with your values to become a more broadly capable human being? There's a lot more I can say about this and that I will say in future videos, but for today, let's leave you with this one piece. And that is learn to identify and deal with predators. Now, a lot of people don't want to hear that, because a lot of people want to think that everything is just this cozy, beautiful little rainbow. And I'm here to tell you, obviously, and I hope that you know this as soon as I point it out, it's not. There are forces in this world that are predatory and that are harmful and that are dangerous. And they are trying to purposefully apply their powers in a covert way underneath the surface of your awareness to hypnotize you and to take control of your life. There are aspects of this world which are simply not friendly to you. And knowing how to identify them, knowing where they show up, and all the insidious ways in which they do show up, learning to identify and spot the predators in your world are critical. Because as an adult human being, we would then actually be responsible for our own safety. And this is a big part of what I'm referring to, is learning to become responsible for your own safety, not shirking the responsibility of safety to other people. That's what babies do. That's what children do. They expect the adults to take care of them. And a lot of us these days, what we're trying to do is not actually become more responsible for our safety, but to relinquish more of our power to the collective so that the others make us safe through their behavior. The world has no responsibility to make you safe. That's an illusion. That's a fantasy. It's not real. You have no right to safety. That is an idea. And there are plenty of examples right now, today, in the natural world that will show you that's not the case. People and creatures are being eaten all the time. In fact, the ocean is full of creatures eating one another. This idea of your safety is everyone else's responsibility is a lie. And it's a lie that's told to you by the predators so that they can take over. And learning to spot these forces, and some places that you can start looking are religion, politics, and corporations. Where are these predators and how are they showing up in your life in order to do things that are not in your best interest? And while there are more of these predators out in the world, this is something that you can start to broadly look for. And learn how to take your responsibility for safety back into your hands by learning to put systems into place, learning to inoculate yourself, learning to protect yourself from these forces. Because if you don't do it, no one else is going to do it for you. And so to recap, the layers that we're going to want to explore, at least initially, for starting to become an adult human being are first, self-governance. And in order to truly self-govern, we have to really identify our true values. And if you want more help on understanding true values, check out this video that I created on that topic. The next layer is to become more broadly capable, to learn how to actually develop a broad set of skills so that you can feel like a capable human being, so that less and less of what is required in your life is handed over to others to manage for you. And the third is to start to spot the predators, start to spot where the danger is at. Look for where there are institutions and forces that do not have your best interests at heart, trying to control you and take over your life. And so for the people who can actually wake up and become aware that this mind war is in place and that it's trying to keep us stuck and stifled as juvenile human beings in order to herd us into some corral of a dystopian future controlled by corporations and big tech, we are the resistance in this mind war. And it's our responsibility to show up and do what we can in order to keep us all free. Take care.